stealthy giant insects that can shoot barbs.
Look what Wilson Cruz can do when another character takes over his body.
Oh my goodness. Those topics and more on today's BioTrekkie with the Admiral, starting now. Welcome back to BioTrekkie with the Admiral. I am Mohammed Noor. I'm a biology professor at Duke University, and I'm an occasional science advisor for the Star Trek universe.
And I'm Jane Brooke. I played Admiral Katrina Cornwell on the first two seasons of Star Trek Discovery, and we are here today to talk about episodes 3 and 4 in season 5. The final wonderful season of Star Trek Discovery. So we always start with it being BioTrekkie show. We always start with biology and Mohammed separating out a few thoughts he has about biology in each episode. So I hand it over to you, Mohammed.
Sure thing. So the first two come from episode 3, and they're both related to the giant cloaked insect things that we saw there. I think it was called an Itronach or something like that. I didn't quite catch the name, but that was really cool. And I was thinking about those barbs that it could shoot and trying to think like what animals have barb-like things that they can shoot. So I want to talk a little bit about that for a while. The second part also related to them is approaches for being stealthy, because it did have that weird kind of reflectiveness so it could hide. And just briefly from episode 4, which was wonderful, but didn't have a whole lot of biology, I want to talk about regrowing injured appendages, because we saw Rayner may have lost his hand there or needed something associated with fixing his hand.
Oh, okay. So talk to us about those were cool bugs. They were kind of see-through, you know. I mean, they could also stealthily disappear and appear. But anyway, I don't think there's any of those on Earth. So talk to us about things that can shoot barbs. I'll have to avoid those.
Yeah. So let me ask you, if you think of shooting barbs, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
At bow and arrow. I mean,
Oh, that's actually a better one.
yeah. Well, I think of a bow and arrow, but
Yeah.
and then you know how kids, you think of those poison darts that
Oh
people,
yeah.
you see them in old movies where people go and they'd kill the king or something like
Oh,
that.
totally. Those are much better than what most people say. Usually when I ask people questions like that, they'll say like porcupine or something like that.
Right.
But as you probably know, because you know a lot of science, that's actually a misnomer. Porcupines cannot actually shoot their quills. Like,
Oh,
they can make them erect, and then obviously then if something's trying to grab it, then it gets very spiky, and they can kind of shake them off, or they can just release them so then it stays in the predator or whatever was disturbing the porcupine. But they cannot shoot them. That's actually a misnomer. People sometimes think they can do that.
I didn't realize people think they can do that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, oh
Uh,
yeah, people ask me that all the time. Like when I'm giving a talk and I mention anything about shooting, they're always like, "Oh, porcupines can shoot their quills." Like, no, they can't. It seems like it, and I think that happens sometimes in like cartoons or something like that, but that's not a real thing. However, actually, generally speaking, projectile shooting in general in animals is not very common. I think we talked before about the bombardier beetle, which kind of sends a spray, but shooting a projectile is actually not that common in animals overall. I mean, the closest thing is like tarantulas. Tarantulas have little hairs they can kind of flick off with their leg, and in that sense, they're kind of shooting it. But even that, it's they're hairs. They're not shooting per se. But if you think about barbs, the thing that most people tend to think of are like stingrays. And I want to come back to jellyfish because jellyfish have something kind of similar. So stingrays are a bad one. They have these large barbs that can sometimes be a few inches long and they're made of cartilage. That's pretty terrible when they get slapped into you. Kind
Now
of
those they don't shoot. I mean, they're still attached to them when they shoot
exactly.
out. But yeah, that's what killed that wonderful Australian. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't.
no, those were. I think he got like right into his heart or right next to his heart or something like that. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
those are terrifying. Those are terrifying, and that's obviously a very tragic example of it there too. Um, but yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible, and what they'll actually do is they'll actually release a venom as they stick in there too. So it's not just the puncture, but there's also a venom in there. And with stingrays, I mean, they can grow them back. It takes a long time, might be months or something like that, but they can grow them back. But something that's even more cool. Do you know what jellyfish stings are? A lot of people don't understand what they are. I actually have to look this up because I didn't know either. So
I know they wrap their leg around you or something, or they wrap.
Well,
tell me.
that's how they get it. But then what's actually happening to make it so it hurts, right?
Oh,
So what happens there is it's fascinating. If you look at what's going on at the at the cellular level, they have these little cells called nematocysts. They're inside their tentacles, and it's basically like they have a bunch of little like springs almost with hypodermic needles at the end. And what'll happen is when they're touched, those things shoot out like these little tiny hypodermic needles shoot out into your skin, and they're still attached. There's like a little string going back to the jellyfish tentacle, and then they like basically inject you directly with this little hypodermic needle with this poison.
and do those little needles go back into the jellyfish, or do they stay inside of you like a bee sting? You know,
I
like when a bee
think that's
stings
a good
you,
question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think they could easily withdraw them because usually at that point, like you might do something crazy with the jellyfish. So I don't know.
they just sting you with it, and you probably have a bunch of little, because you know when a bee stings you, people are like, oh, make sure to get the stinger out of your hand.
Yeah.
So that might
Well, this is the misnomer. So you've probably heard that there's a myth out, there's another myth out there that people say like, oh, like urine is good for getting rid of the jellyfish thing. That doesn't actually work.
Wait, that what? They say what?
Urine can be used like pee.
Oh, they do say urine. Yeah, they
Yeah.
say do say that. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't actually help. That's not
Probably
useful. And actually, there's
surface
a danger if
down
you
the
rub it.
coast.
There's a danger you actually like make more of them than go into you. So yeah, it's very, very dangerous in terms of how you actually get these things. It's thought to like the best thing to do would be to remove the stingers with tweezers and gloved hands and hot water, being very, very careful because what you don't want to do is you don't want to release more stingers or worse, more venom through the stingers that are already into you. So it's kind of horrible.
It is horrible. This is why I don't want to go in the ocean. I'm afraid of sharks and stingrays.
Oh,
You know, I
ocean is
live.
wonderful as long as you can avoid the jellyfish. But it's not
Yeah.
just jellyfish. Sea anemones have something similar to that too. But whew, but it's fascinating this idea of these microscopic poison harpoons that are
So they,
spring loaded as traps inside their cells to shoot out at you.
and who are they protecting? Like a stingray would be, not often attacking a human. So I wonder who their natural predators are and how successful they are in keeping those predators away with their stings. Do you know
Good
anything?
question. I mean, stingrays, I think my understanding is they tend to stay on the bottom, so I don't know
They're on
who
the
comes
bottom.
down.
So who's
It might
coming in?
be, yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether it's sharks or something like that. I don't know which comes after them. But
That's
yeah,
what I'm
that's a good question.
thinking. Shark, they go when he.
Yeah. I'm sure with jellyfish, it's all sorts of things. I mean, because they're swimming around there. So I'm sure fish are coming and bugging them all the time. So they probably sting the fish.
Here, the grumpy old stingrays of the ocean. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating stuff. But yeah, I couldn't think of anything that really shoots projectiles. Your examples of like basically human sort of things, like bow and arrow. I mean, that's an
Yeah,
excellent
like
example
you
of shooting
said, I was
projectiles.
thinking
We do
human
that very well.
poison darts, bow and arrow. Yeah, that was not the you were asking the biological question, but
I
I
mean, we're
mean,
biology, it counts.
they sting you, and they leave something in you, and
Yeah.
you know, uh, well, it's not really when you get bitten and you're poisoned. It's not
No,
really
that's a slightly different thing. Yeah. But
but
yeah, those things, those ones that went into book, those were terrible. You see how like they were gigantic and they were like glowy and stuff. Like, what is that? I'm
and
guessing
then
they're
she was able to
glowy.
heal him with her gun.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. Books seemed like fine afterwards. I mean, we saw, but I guess they have the little portable skin, what do they call it, dermal regenerator or something like that.
I
And it's
want
like,
him.
I guess they healed him up pretty quick, but he seemed okay. Like, that next morning.
Well, they did a shot where she's pulling it out and he's like, ow, ow. And then she does the like phaser or the healing gun or whatever. And,
Yeah.
and it's just a quick way of being like, let's just get on with the show,
Yeah. We don't want to dwell on this one.
Don't want to, yeah, stay here.
Yay for
Um,
the 32nd century. But like it doesn't hurt that bad. Maybe they have something against jellyfish stingers too. They can just like zap you and like, you're all good.
great.
That
Yeah,
would
we
be
need
amazing.
those things.
So the other thing with those giant insects or whatever they were called, Itronach or something like that, was that the way they could kind of hide. Now, obviously, like we don't have any cloaked animals out there.
Oh, yeah, they could cloak themselves.
Yeah, that would be amazing. That'd be terrifying for something that big, but it'd be amazing. It is interesting to think like why that something that big even needs to cloak itself when, especially when these giant, like what would attack it where it both needs to hide and have those kinds of
Right.
weapons? Like,
And you
man,
could
this is
only
an
see their
overpowered animal.
outline.
Hmm?
You could only see the outline of them. You couldn't see the whole thing. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. What
Yeah,
were they?
no, that was fascinating. And they said something about it just briefly. I don't remember what exactly they said in terms of like, oh, it reflects the surroundings or something like that. But Yeah, so I mean, obviously we have a lot of animals that just match their surroundings, right? That they are green and they hide in the grass, or they are brown and they hide on bark, or things like that. There's a lot of things like that. Um, but I was trying to think of what are more active stealth approaches, and like again, sticking with the sort of the sea aspect, cephalopods, so things like octopus and squid, they have a lot of interesting specializations for trying to hide. They actually have these little pigment sacs that can be opened just by a nerve impulse, right? So that can cause them to change color in literally milliseconds. So this is distinct. Remember in the last episode we were talking about like iridescence and things like that. This is actually like a pigment sac and just like sprays it out into them, so they can just very rapidly change color, just on call basically from a nerve impulse, which is like fascinating. I think that's super
Have
cool.
you seen, I mean, this is my daughters teased me about this. They're like, every mother is asking their kids if they've watched my octopus teacher. Have you seen that documentary?
I have not seen that.
Oh,
It,
I should, every single person watching this program and everyone they know, it is the most stunning. It got the Oscar, I think, for best documentary a few years ago. It's called My Octopus Teacher. You just go, how did they get this footage? How did they get this footage? I'm gonna actually Google it here on my phone, My Octopus, to make sure I'm giving you the right title. You should watch it with the whole family. Yeah, My Octopus Teacher. It's an amazing documentary. I won't tell you, where a man does go into the ocean and kind of befriends a little octopus. I mean, he spends like a whole year with this octopus. It's amazing. And there are scenes where the octopus, just like that, um,
wow.
was what you said, to
Wow.
become exactly the modeled color of colors. That's what was interesting. Not just one color, became the modeled colors of the rocks, just like that. And you couldn't, they're filming it and you could see how they can't be seen very easily. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No,
Those are World War II planes. They, you can hear them. They fly in formation on Sundays, these guys, in renovated World War II
oh, I
planes. It's
couldn't hear
pretty
it. I
cool.
couldn't hear it.
Couldn't hear it,
Uh-uh.
but everybody has to see My Octopus Teacher. You will really enjoy it. Yeah. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, octopus, so they have those things, but they also have these other sorts of cells. I think did I write down the name of it? I did not write down the name of them. They also have these reflector cells, right? So basically it's kind of more similar to what this was described at. What they'll do is that'll scatter full spectrum light to help it look kind of white, but also helping with matching. It basically makes the outline harder to see in some backgrounds. And that to some extent is a little bit closer to what we
to
saw
what
with
we saw.
these giant insect sorts of things. So they'll reflect basically whatever
And
colors are
kind of
shined on them, they'll reflect that back. And it's
what
interesting that people have actually tried to design materials based on how these cells work, right? In terms of these essentially more biologically inspired camouflage sorts of things. So
because would that make it hard? It would make it harder for the predator to see you.
exactly,
It would
exactly.
confuse them.
Yep,
I just see
exactly.
something. No, that was nothing.
Yeah. Which again,
Yeah.
I still wonder what is the predator of those giant things that we saw in that episode.
What's the
Like
predator of those giant things?
it would have to
And
be
I
pretty
have to say,
horrifying.
they were horrifying, and I have to say, their vulnerable eggs, like they needed their eggs to be camouflaged, basically, not just them. But maybe
Yeah.
that's, but yeah. So, and then what was the third thing? Or maybe you didn't finish with the.
Oh no, that was it. That was it. The last thing was this idea of like regeneration. So we don't regenerate very well. I mean, there are other animals that can. So, like for example, you can cut like the hand off a salamander, or you can cut like a part of a leg off a starfish, and it'll like just grow it back. It may not be perfect, but they'll grow it back pretty good. Sadly, like you cut off even like our fingers, and it's just gone, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There are some exceptions to that. So if you look at young kids, if you cut the fingertip, but you leave the base of the nail, so just for young kids, they actually can grow them back, which is kind of amazing.
So you leave
Just the
the
base of the
cuticle
nail there. So you have a little tiny bit of that very, very base part of the nail on there.
and their whole nail and finger will grow back.
Yeah. For young kids, they can do that. It's thought they have some sort of stem cells there that actually help regrow like the nerves and everything else that's around there. So it's kind of amazing that that actually can work. It'll grow back the muscle, the bone, everything all around there. And you can actually reform the tip of the finger, but just for little kids and just the
How,
tip of the finger.
Up to about what age?
I don't know the number. I mean,
Oh,
if I was just to speculate, I'd say like 6 or something like that. But it's not. It's like young kids. It's
right.
not like a 12-year-old.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
That's
And,
cool.
and there's a lot of studies in frogs trying to figure out how this works because I mean, obviously, if we could figure out a way to do this, this would be just kind of generally really helpful. So there's a recent study by some researchers at Harvard that found a cocktail of drugs that would help with regrowing whole limbs in frogs. And they found like if you put all these little things in there, like, oh, then we cut off the leg of a frog, it'll actually grow the whole thing back. So
And it works.
apparently,
That would be amazing for human
right?
that lost limbs, that would be
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
That would
Actually,
take
just
a long time to grow a whole arm, though.
totally, totally. I just watched Echo for another show. I don't know if you've seen that TV show, but part of the plot of that show is the girl who's in it actually lost her leg in an accident. So as a kid, so that would have been something that if they had that, maybe she could grow it back. It would completely change the plot
Right.
of the show.
Yeah, that could cross-reference Star Trek. And yeah, I don't know if Rayner lost. I know I was
It was
wondering if
messed up. Yeah, it
be a
was messed up.
plot. I have a feeling that they planted a seed. I was wondering, are they planting a seed for some further plot on that? Because when he's like, no, 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 I'm okay, when they were in the ready room. And then when he came onto the bridge, they made sure to film. He was like going like this with his hand, like when he walked behind the station. So I thought, ooh, something's gonna happen with that hand.
Yeah, could be, could be. Yeah, we never saw him like go see Dr. Culber and get like whatever the magical dermal generator thing.
And hopefully he did do that.
Hopefully he did. Hopefully that's just gone, but like it could, like you said, it could be a plot thing. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen past this episode, so
Oh, okay. Why are they capturing that hand? There's going to be something about that hand. I don't know. We'll see.
we'll
Maybe
see.
it's okay.
But it was fascinating set of episodes. I loved it. And I love the biology associated with that giant insect thing. Like, ooh, something big and non-human. I love it.
Well, you said once in our previous BioTrekkies that beyond a certain size, it would be impossible for a bug to be that big, didn't
That's
you?
right. Good memory. Yes. There's
Yeah.
the square cube rule, which basically as you get bigger, essentially what happens is as you grow, volume grows as the cube of increase. So if you double, for example, you then, get the cube of the double for that. Whereas the surface area, which is what happened in terms of the muscle's ability to hold things up, goes by the square. So as you get too big, it doesn't work anymore. There's also the question of how that thing could fly. It was gigantic. The amount of lift it would have to use for flying would be
Right.
really big. But flip side is this is an animal we don't really know in the sense maybe it's kind of hollow inside, though. I guess it can't be that hollow if it can shoot these giant flaming barbs.
It looked, it would have to have a great big engine inside it, like a plane to take
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
But yeah, it looked kind
Atomic power. I don't know.
of powered by electromagnetic forces or
Yeah.
something.
I mean, the lift that the wings would have to use, it
And they
would
were
have to generate a
tiny
lot
little
of lift.
wings. They were kind of tiny little wings,
Yeah, which is odd. And
but
it
that's
didn't seem like when it was
fun.
flying, it was just blowing everything around as it would need for flapping that much. But it's great memory, yeah. But I still, even though it may not be realistic, I still thought it was super cool. Like, yes,
Oh, but it's fun. That's what's fun about Star Trek or being able to go into fantasy because you can just be like, I don't know how they do it. They just do, and it's
they just
fun.
do. And
Yeah.
that's actually the from a consulting. So I didn't consult on this, but from a consulting perspective, something my colleague Dr. Erin McDonald, who's the main consultant for the Star Trek franchise, she always says if something looks really difficult, you're better off just not explaining it than trying to explain it. Just don't. Just leave it alone
Really
and move on.
smart. That's just present it as a fact and move on.
It
Yeah.
just is, so for example, the Heisenberg compensator that the transporters use, or the inertial dampeners, how it can go at, the speed of light and then stop, and nobody is like slammed against the walls. Like, we don't know how they work. They just do. Very well, thank you.
They've got some sort of opposing thing going in the ship. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. But I'd love to hear your take on the episodes. And both you mentioned already Wilson Cruz on episode 3, which I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But I'd
so
also love to hear your thoughts on episode 4 in the context of like,
and the
Burnham
time jump.
fighting Burnham and bringing back some of these old characters and stuff. I'd love to hear what you think.
That was really fun. Well, first, episode 3, Wilson did a fantastic job. I mean, I was so thrilled to see him. He just took that role and he changed his voice. He made his voice low,
Yeah.
his movements slower, and kind of, it was hilarious and wonderful. He was able to just become a different person, enjoying being in a body again. He did a great job. I think he did a great job, and he had great humor and presence about him. So I just shout out to Wilson. That was great. Also in okay, so I like that Tig is back.
Yeah.
She's so funny. I mean, there was so much humor in episode 3. The way that Rayner wants everybody introduced to him in 20 words or less, and and he's like, "You're done. You're done. That was 22." I mean, that's was just a fun storyline. And then, of course, it's an arc where he learns by the end of episode 4 why a good leader does need to be a colleague with the people, if you really, really want to convince someone. So it was funny in episode 3 and it paid off in episode 4. I like the trill. I wrote down, they had cool red robes. I like the wardrobe is really, really good. I mean, it's always been really good, but that was one thing I was going to look up that I didn't, and you might know. The wardrobe, is it just season 5 that the wardrobe designer changed?
Oh, I don't know. Do you mean for the trail specifically or in general?
Or Discovery? They credited a different wardrobe. Oh, I'll look it
Oh,
up this time.
I didn't notice. Oh, interesting. And we saw the trill back in season 3, like when Adira first joined. We saw them there with the red robes, and we'd seen that same head trill guy then back then too.
Yeah. Oh, maybe I just didn't remember those cool red robes.
It's okay.
But the one thing I did want to mention, and I meant to mention at the end of our last BioTrekkie, is I do love the storyline that they've introduced of Moll being the daughter of Book's mentor. That is really great. I mean, they're doing all these different levels. With each character, they're doing different levels, and then they're doing the global questions that we ask, which we'll get to as well. Then we have, Wilson. I just wrote so many notes. Great new voice, great new character. Hilarious with everybody introducing themselves. Oh, I put down here Mohammed, but I think we already discussed it. I said, do you have any idea? But we've already kind of discussed it. Stamets says to Rayner that they're trying to find something that can create life and also heal everything. I mean, that's what they're after here. The good guys are looking for something that created life, and therefore, with the ability to create life, it obviously would have the ability to heal life that is injured. But in the wrong hands, we find out in episode 4, it's disaster. But did that strike your biology mind to think? I mean, we've already kind of talked about the origin of creation, so maybe there's nothing more to say on that.
Well, it's interesting to me, like what struck me that was weird in the sense of, let's say, for example, let's say that the Miller-Urey experiments we talked about last time worked and they just created bacteria when they did that. I don't see how that would help us heal. I'd be like, no, okay. It's an interesting thought. I mean, it would be fascinating from a basic science perspective, but I guess we could make more bacteria. I don't know.
How does it work? How does it work? Well, we're going to find out by episode 10, maybe.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. But I mean, that's part of the mystery, as you said. We'll find out.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I wrote joke after joke in episode 3, the red herring joke, like when Wilson's like, what is that? I mean, he was so funny. Yeah, I still don't get it. It was funny. They had a great location.
Oh, the red herring.
Was the red herring joke. A really nice moment with Saru and Tarina, which I thought, God, the writers are really exposing themselves here. When they talked about a conscious relationship, and when she said to him very kindly, because he had tried to do something for her sake, to protect her. And she very calmly said, I didn't ask you to do that. Like, treat me like an equal.
Don't protect me. Like you can talk to me. Don't protect me like I'm your kid. Like, no.
Right. Because then in a way it seems loving, and it does come from a place of love, but it takes the agency away.
It does.
To make
it's slightly condescending, unintentionally condescending.
Yeah. And it does speak to, traditional gender politics and all that. I thought that was a really good
Yeah.
moment. We talked about conscious. I
I
mean,
was going to raise that point specifically. I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you.
I mean, it does make you think of conscious coupling and Gwyneth Paltrow and all that, and people made jokes of that. But it, I think the important thing is conscious being together. It's really impossible to do perfectly. That moment when Wilson Cruz, the Culber character, is having a drink after he's done the whole trill thing, and he's having the drink, and he says to Burnham, I can't remember who he was referring to, Dr. Kieran, Dr. So-and-so filled their home with religious symbols from Catholicism, Buddhism, everywhere. Um, you know, icons to remind him or herself. I can't remember who they were talking about, who he's talking about, that we don't always have an answer to everything. And then he said, I don't know if I'm okay with that. And my first reaction was such a human thing. Like we all think that we deserve to have the answers to everything. We're here for like a blink of an eye when you think of the whole time of universe. But then they
Yeah.
carried it further, and just that montage at the end of episode 3 where they showed each character and how everybody's looking for something and everybody's looking for meaning. It's just really good. It's really and they showed each character. It's just very, very good. Episode 4, you asked me about the time bug and
Yeah.
uh, going back. I mean, that was interesting. I literally did not remember when Sonequa met Sonequa, when Burnham met Burnham. I remember thinking, oh, is that what her hair was like? It
It was.
must have been like that
It
because they would,
was.
but like I totally didn't remember. And what fun for Sonequa because she had to go into a place and she did come off as, I mean, what would that have been 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Did come off as 5 years younger. Like she actually acted
Yeah.
differently,
Yeah.
you
She was
know.
still that angry person she was in the first couple of episodes there, where it's not where she is now. She's now very, it's interesting just seeing her growth there.
And her growth as a actor character, but also her growth, sure, as a person,
Yeah.
moves into it. But she just gets better and better. But what fun to do
Yeah.
that. And then I did watch, and I'm like, where are they splitting the screen on this? But they would have had to. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how they did it. They did it with CG and everything, but they would have had to fight one side and then the other side, and then they put it together. But that was really interesting. And then because we met her when we got to the bridge, I think the bridge came right after that. It could, yeah.
Yeah.
Then I'm looking at Tilly's hair, and I'm looking at, I'm looking at every character, and
Oh, and
you know,
Arium. Oh, Arium.
yeah, Ariam was there and did a great job. So that was really great. Um, really good fight.
Ronnie Rowe Jr.'s, I forget what is Ronnie Rowe Jr.'s character's name? I forget. He was back too.
Which character?
Ronnie Rowe Jr. I don't remember this character name. That's the actor.
I did have it, I don't remember the character's name.
Bryce. I think it was Bryce.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that was very cool. That must have been so much fun for them, the actors, because they were so close as a team starting out the show.
Did
Tig
you have
is
that for any shows that you worked in where like somebody was gone for like several seasons and then came back all of a sudden?
any shows in my life
Yeah.
that happened. Um, Not that come to mind right away. Not that come to mind right
Okay.
away.
It's okay.
I think it's just a fun it must have been a fun reunion for them.
Yeah.
Really fun reunion. Um, they brought everybody into that episode. They brought Linus in
Yeah.
with areas. She looked very good in red. It suits you, and she's like, good. Um, again, I've said that how funny she is. Um, Stamets, it was hilarious how they had Stamets like keep having to come up with excuses to get everybody out of there. There's spores, they got to get out, or you're irritating me. They just had so much humor. I really appreciate that.
That was another good case of growth, too. Like the Stamets from the first couple of episodes is radically different from Stamets now.
Yes, yes, and as people, they're different. Really nice moment between Rayner and Stamets when Rayner goes up to the console and he goes, "Let's show them what some tool guys can do," or whatever the line was. It was fun. And then I wrote down done very lovingly, and I think I'm saying by the writers and director and everybody. just using connection to keep when the Burnham character says it's connection that keeps us honest, um, just speaking to another kind of leadership, which is a message that, again, I mean, the writers, they'll put it out on Star Trek and, you do the best you can, but it's a message that power can be defined in different ways. And, not to get all treacly, but not in a Hallmark treacly way, but the biggest, form of power really is love. And so, yeah, I think just them trying to speak to the fact that there are different ways to lead. You don't just have to pounce on people,
That's
kill
a
them.
that last part's a brilliant point, and that's what made things work in the context of Arium there. That if she didn't connect with them in that way, if Burnham didn't connect with them in that way, that wouldn't have brought Arium over. It's like, no, she's right, and like basically it's because she knows them. That is the power by her connection. They know to trust her, as opposed to just, I'm just going to scream commands at you, which is more the Rayner's default approach.
Yeah, and Ariam says, I would sacrifice myself,
And
I
she
would.
did.
And then everybody goes, whoa, um, because Rayner is able, they're both able to give people facts about themselves, and everybody's like, still not sure.
Yeah.
And then Ariam moment. But yeah, I really love, I read this is going to seem like it's not a non sequitur, but I happened to read an article in National Geographic this morning about a fourth century female philosopher who died so brutally, horribly. You don't even want to think about it. But Hyper, oh my gosh, I had her name. Hyperius. Hyperius. Let me look. I think I have it right here. But she, yeah, her name was. Let me look because people should look this up. She was a fourth century, I don't know, Hyperius or something. Anyway, but she was a Neoplatonist. And as I read the article about her, I thought, oh my God, the writers of Star Trek are Neoplatonists. They're looking for, through science and astronomy, sort of, they're looking for the ultimate answer about, the one. So, but hopefully they will not come to the same end that she came to in fourth
Yeah.
century Alexandria. But gosh, I can't believe I forgot the name, and I can't pull it up right now.
Okay.
I just thought, does the quest of humans ever really change? We've been asking the same questions, and we've been trying from different points of view, even way back the ancient Greeks and um, I guess Egyptian in this case, Alexandria, but coming to the answers from what seem like different places, a scientific or religious point of view, but we're all after the same thing.
Yeah.
So
I
very
loved
interesting.
one thing I loved, and you alluded to this a little bit too. I loved the connections, not just among the characters, but also, especially given this is the final season. I realized they didn't know this was the final season when they filmed it, but I thought the clips in episode 4 were a great way of just saying, like, look at how far we've come just on the series. Like, remember back when we had control, remember back when we had, all these other things going on, and like, oh yeah, and like, oh, there's a mention of Lorca and what was Rekha Sharma's character's name?
Oh, Reka. They mentioned Reka.
They mentioned her character name,
Oh,
Landry. Landry.
right, Landry. That's right.
Yeah, they mentioned her in passing, saying Lorca and Landry were away.
That's my question for you, which you may not know. I know that everybody heard that the fifth season would be the last on the Star Trek cruise before this last cruise.
That's
And
right.
that would have been like February of 23, right?
Correct.
Somewhere around there. And they kept filming until April. I think, but what I'm very curious to know is, did the writers, how much time did the writers have to rewrite things knowing now that they were writing the end of a show?
I thought, I
You
could be wrong. I thought they'd actually finished principal photography, and what they did is they basically just redid something at the end. So they basically just had like one more week of shooting in April that was not planned before. Then said we're gonna come back and do this then. I don't think they were actually
Oh, so
still
they had
shooting.
finished principal photography by the time. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So then they
Now,
just fixed something for the end, which I don't know what it was, but I assume they changed something to then tie things up even more at the end. But I think it must have been reasonably well tied up if they could fix it in like one week.
Right. I mean, they had to tie up the season.
Yeah,
So that could be considered the end of the
yeah,
series, but then they probably did like icing on the cake.
yeah.
Oh,
It may have been like a teaser for the next season. They're like, oh, well, chop that out or something like that.
yeah. But what's interesting is because I'm experiencing it, I know it's the last season. We know, we all
Yeah,
know. So when I'm watching it, it seems as if they knew because it's all so universal, like really addressing all these important issues.
yeah,
It's really beautiful and
yeah.
quite
I'm really sad it's the last season. Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
me too. No, that's yeah, they're doing a great job.
Yeah. I'm sad it's the last season, but at the same time, in terms of a way to go out, this seems like a great way to go out. Let's go out with this like big theme of connectedness and tie back to the previous seasons and tie back to other Trek and let's go over that. I mean, that is a fantastic way to end the series. I mean,
I
yeah,
say go out with people wanting more. That's always a good way.
exactly.
Always a
Exactly.
so
Well, hopefully everybody wants more BioTrekkie with the Admiral too, because I do.
I love talking about it. So thank you.
Thank you. Always great to chat with you, my friend. And tune in 2 more weeks from now, and we'll hopefully be talking about episodes 5 and 6. I have no idea what they'll be, but I'm excited to see.
Yeah. Thank you.
Take
Thanks.
care.